Wonder Woman! Okay. Hey, I am Chris Gore. This is the Film Threat Podcast, a bonus episode of the Film Threat Podcast, where we'll be talking about Wonder Woman. I'm here with a group of people. I'm going to just allow them to introduce themselves as we go round the table and discuss Wonder Woman, because we just got out of the screening here at the Arclight Cinemas in Hollywood, California. We got out of the Cinerama Dome, which is a great place to see the film. Anthony Ray Bench is not with us, but he'll be offering his opinion as sort of a bonus, like sort of a Marvel. It's like a Marvel extra scene at the end. Anthony is going to give his thoughts, but I'd like to give my initial thoughts to kind of kick it off. I'm going to pass it around. My initial thoughts: it's the best DC movie. It is the best DC movie.
No, I mean post-Snyder.
Yes.
The new DC. You're saying that is... Hi, my name is Charlie, by the way. Charlie de Lauzirika. It is... what Chris is trying to say, and what I'm trying to say, is the best of the post-Zack Snyder Man of Steel... The Snyderverse, as they call it, is the best. It's the best DC movie, the Snyderverse. Yes.
Yeah. So, but like, okay, and the thing is this: we're going to talk spoilers because this is a bonus episode, and you chose to listen to it, so we will be discussing spoilers. But let me, because he's grasping at my recording device, I'm going to hand it off to Cliff Stephenson, who's been on the show before.
Okay, I will be one of the few at the table who will not agree that it is the best of the Snyderverse, because I actually think Man of Steel is a better film overall. But I love Man of Steel, so that was a high bar to clear. But just to be clear, not everybody thinks it's the best film of the Snyderverse. So that's all I've been saying. Oh wait, back to Charlie.
No, on the way in, I mean, Cliff and I were talking about it. What's interesting about Man of Steel is that it's a riskier film. So like the things it gets right, it really, really gets right. And the things that kind of drops the ball on, it's pretty spectacular. So it's more extreme. Like the highs and the lows are more extreme with Man of Steel, whereas Wonder Woman is definitely more even keeled. Like it's more polished, it's more measured. It's kind of like they finally got the DC formula right. And I've heard other people say it's like a Phase 1 Marvel movie, kind of like an Iron Man. I think it totally feels like that. It feels like an early Marvel movie, like where they're finally kind of starting to get it together. That was my initial thought.
Well, let's.
Hey, I'm Walter Arias. I'm just passing by here over on the Film Threativerse. Just a gameaholic with a very passing interest in these superhero movies, let's say.
What?
Yeah, I enjoy them, but I'm not a comic geek, sure.
So what's your verdict?
My verdict, I would say it's probably the best DC movie I've seen, in the Snyderverse. But again, you flip tables all you want, Cliff. But I'm just not that into the comics, so I enjoy the movies for what they are, and I think this was consistent. It had a consistent tone. It was much better than you could say of something like a Suicide Squad, which was all over the place. Yes, I know I'm setting a very low bar here, but at the same time, I really like the consistent, funny tone. I like the funny moments in there, and it did feel like a Marvel Phase 1.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Walter for his first and only and last appearance on the Film Threat Podcast. I thought that was everything you had to say was amazing. But no, but let's talk about like what worked and what didn't work. What worked? Chris Pine really worked. I mean, he was by far one of the best. Yeah, he was dreamy. One of the best actors in the movie. Had an above average timepiece. I think we all agree. And the other things that worked, I thought the humor worked. I think it's the most humor we've seen in a DC Snyderverse film. So the humor worked well. And just I thought the story was fairly simple. It could have had more layers of complexity, but here's what didn't work for me. a villain that is a digital effect. I really don't like when a villain in a movie is a digital effect. Sure, there's a reveal and there's an actor that's part of this digital effect, but for the most part, the main villain that is battled at the climax is a digital effect, and it just doesn't work. To me, nothing will top Ian McDiarmid, as a villain. Okay, Ian McDiarmid, the Emperor from the Star Wars movies. Okay, Cliff is like trying. Cliff, what are you?
Wait, can you say that? Yeah, go to Charlie. We have two women here with us tonight. I'd like to hear what they have to say. So let's start with Carlee.
Carlee.
Okay, hi, my name's Carlee Baker. I've been on the podcast before. Yeah, and I'll probably get invited back. So there. I thought it was awesome to see a film, and I'm here with Linda Sue. Say hi, Linda.
Hi.
For represent for the ladies.
Yes.
I personally thought it was awesome that it was such a girl power film. And I thought that was a wonderful thing. I thought it was a little heavy-handed at times, but I felt like it almost had to be because the superhero film universe, both on Marvel and DC side, has been so heavily male. Even when you've got your Scarlett Johanssons and stuff, she's never the hero, she's always the sidekick. So I thought it was kind of nice to have a little bit of the girls rule, boys drool effect there. And I thought that Gal Gadot was like potentially the most beautiful human being that I've ever seen in my entire life, and so that helped as well because she was just a perfect specimen of something more than a human being, and I thought that was really cool. Linda?
Well, I thought that her otherworldliness, beauty really carried the film. I felt that she really lived up to what a goddess should embody in beauty, in character, in delivery of speech. That worked for me. I think she was very inspiring. What didn't work out yet? Oh, what didn't quite work for me was I thought that her dialogue wasn't as sophisticated. I thought there was a lot of naivete. We get it that she's naive, and I thought that they dragged the plot on. The plot was simple, but it was a little bit dragged on, and I needed her, I guess, to be a little more mythical, a little more mysterious. So I thought the comic relief didn't quite work for me at all.
So more of
I thought it was mediocre. The comic too obvious and just expected, and I needed her to be just superior, and I didn't get that quite throughout the whole film.
Well, first of all, I agree with you about her being naive. I thought that was just, they were playing fish out of water for comedic effect and not, if she's really as learned as she was, what did she say? I know 400 languages, right? Or some sort of crazy thing like that. If she's that learned, she probably wouldn't have been as surprised by all this, like, oh, that's a dress? This is a store? This is where people shop? Like, it was a little ridiculous. Although I'm really glad that Patty Jenkins resisted the temptation to do that sort of 80s, like, girl in the mirror, like, fashion montage, trying on dresses, because they mention it in a line of dialogue that she's trying on all these dresses, but it would have been so easy for her to just, play some sort of cheesy music and have her try on dresses. So I like that they resisted that. So, but I don't know. Out of Batman v Superman, I think Wonder Woman was a highlight, and so now seeing, yeah. That's not a high bar to Cliff. Right. Okay, wait, back to Cliff here. He has something to say. Wait.
All right. No, I take that back because Batman v Superman, Batman is actually good in, like, Ben Affleck's Batman, and Bruce Wayne is actually, I would say, because to me, Wonder Woman in Batman v Superman is in a weird way, seriously underutilized, and in a completely different way, overutilized, because they thread her through the whole movie like it's supposed to be some mystery who she is, even though you know who she is because she was on every poster. And so they're playing this game of like, who is she, this mysterious person? And then when she shows up, they've already kind of sucked all the air out of the room, because you're just sort of waiting for her to show up at that point because she was in the trailer and everything else. So yeah, I mean, and then as far as as you go into this movie, obviously the thing that this movie does very, very right is, I think, overall the casting, the chemistry, the characters. She's great as Wonder Woman. I thought Connie Nielsen as her mother, Robin Wright as her aunt who trains her. Like, all of that opening stuff is great, and all that character stuff is great. I do think Chris Pine, because he's so associated with Star Trek right now, that he's a little bit of a distraction. Because you're kind of looking at him through the whole thing, and you kind of just see Kirk with a slightly different haircut, and it just feels like it doesn't feel that far removed from what he would do in Kirk. So to me, I mean, the villains are terrible, but he was kind of the weak link in terms of the main cast, I thought. But my bigger problem with the movie overall is it feels oddly inert. There's a lot of huge sections of this movie where just nothing really happens, where they're just sort of moving plot along, and they're just pushing the plot along from A to B, and then you get this great action sequence in the middle that's easily the best thing in the whole movie. And then you kind of roll downhill after that again. By the end, I was totally bored with that end fight, with the big climax, which should be the culmination of all of these things. That thing is it pales to that middle sequence where she sort of first appears, that you just sort of feel deflated, and it doesn't have the weight that I think they thought it was going to, because it just ends up being a CG character, and things just smash around, and people start throwing tanks and trucks, and things are exploding, and there's nothing really to do. I mean, and by the time you're at the end, where she's literally just a beam of light, just felt oddly motionless in the way it pans. So that was kind of where I had a lot of problems with just how much it feels like it doesn't move. But tonally, yes, they get the tone dead on through the whole thing. That feels right. It feels more consistent with what I think they wanted this DC universe to be. But I think that they kind of faltered when it came to the momentum. So tone, yes; momentum, no. Charlie, what say you?
Well, I'd like to talk about that they kind of toned down the style, like the over-stylized Zack Snyder vibe of a little bit of 300 in there, I guess. But I mean, they toned it down from Man of Steel, from Batman vs Superman, even Suicide Squad for sure. But what kind of haunts me is that the cinematographer, the DP on this film, is Matt Jensen, who shot my final USC short film. And I wonder how my career went down the toilet compared to his. But it was beautiful to see, like, from this crappy little short film we worked on together. He's shot this magnificent, huge, beautiful, intimate epic. So I liked. I mean, I got a little over all the speed ramping. And that was like, I've seen that a lot, and I don't need to see it that much more. And I thought this film should have its own unique feel, but on the whole, I thought it was a nice, balanced in terms of tone, style, character, effects, humor. It was like the most balanced of all the DC, again, Snyderverse movies, because they were so extreme before this. They were so up and down and left and right, and this was just nice and straight down the barrel. I really thought that was good.
I'm curious if Justin wants to say anything. He's sitting.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Justin. The only thing I can honestly tell you is that while watching this movie, all I thought about was my landlord, who's an Israeli woman, and it was just bothering me because I just was like, I can't do this.
That was not the answer that I would have expected. Yeah, that was not what I was expecting.
So take away from a movie more than they need to.
Well, what's weird, should we talk about the battle that happened before the movie? Where we went to I ran into Walter is waving me. I don't know what the protocol in this is.
You should talk about this.
You don't think I should talk about this?
You could get a lot of backlash on it.
Oh, I don't care.
Maybe a lot of people that agree with her.
Not well. I'm just talking about line etiquette, right? Like Walter was in line.
Yep.
He waved to me like, "Hey, I'm your friend. Come to the line." He was closer up to the front of the line. What? We were getting beers and popcorn and walking to the movie, and I walked up to my friend Walter. Hey, cool. And I'm in line, and it was like someone accused me of cutting in line. Now, it's not cutting. Is it cutting in line if you meet your friend who's further up in the line? I'm not. And now, if I cut in front of someone that is a stranger, that's cutting in line. But if I walk to, or as you pointed out, Cliff, I could have texted Walter and say, "Hey man, can you get me 2 beers?" And he could have gotten me 2 beers.
Sure.
The point is this: it was a kerfuffle. I think we'll just leave it at a kerfuffle. Okay, wait. You're gonna get into it. Okay, right. But I do feel a little like I maybe I should have pulled back a little bit. But I don't. Okay, all right. Okay. It was. You know what? It's going to be the plot for Injustice 3, because there was an injustice, and it was me trying to help my friend get popcorn and get a couple beers, and who cares?
Okay, so, all right, a couple things that you have to understand. This woman was yelling at Chris, just yelling at Chris, and I've never seen Chris look more uncomfortable and just under assault. It was like he'd been trapped, because part of him was saying, like, hey, yeah, I guess I kind of see your point, except I'm not going anywhere. So he was sort of trapped in like one of those Saw traps, where he had to decide how he was going to fish the key out of the back of his neck, and he only had 2 choices. So all we could sort of do was walk away. And I feel after you gave your order. Right after I gave my order. Yeah, I'm not stupid. I still got my bottle of water. But I just looked at him and I thought, I've never seen Chris look more uncomfortable, because this woman was just relentless with just went after him. But it was worth seeing.
What I should have done, I should have put my arm around Walter. I should have kissed him intimately and said, "What do you have against gays? We should be able to marry too." And then that would have told her, that would have sort of, it would have been the version of the thing I really wanted to say was, "Shut the fuck up," which was like, look, I'm not cutting in line. Okay, anyways, back to, okay.
But I do think, like I was joking about it, but I do think this movie is making women feel kind of empowered, and I think that maybe they're being a little more aggressive than they might normally. Like, they're like, "Fuck you, this is our movie, what are you doing here? You're in my line." And it felt a little bit like she was a little bit forceful.
Well, here. Let me just cut right to the chase. We as the men at the screening, we were in the minority. This was definitely a lot of women at the screening, and who cares? Like, it didn't bother me. Like, it does. I don't give a shit. Like, there's like a ton of women that were like screaming at the beginning of the movie, women, and I thought, fucking cool, you know? Like, although I wouldn't go to a Superman screening or Man of Steel and scream man, because who cares?
Life is a bunch of men screaming, men, dudes, like that's.
Well, that's right. We do kind of live in the age of the old white guys running things, right? Like, it's, yeah.
We get our one day.
Yeah. No, which is why I have no problem. I don't. It's like, what am I? I'm not arguing against anything. I was just, what does me going up to my friend and getting popcorn have to do with, like, she got like all it was, anyways, I'm gonna be quiet now.
She was okay with you interjecting your order. She really just, flipped when you went back to ask for Cliff's order. That's when all hell broke loose.
What do you want? And then All right, so yeah, that actually it is. Okay, this is Cliff. So it probably is a little bit my fault, although I didn't initiate it because we were about 6 people back in line, and Chris just sort of looked at me and said, "Well, what do you want?" We're getting ready to order. What do you want? Now, again, my point was he could have easily texted me and said, "Hey, what do you want?" And I would have texted and said 2 bottles of water. And that's the other thing. We weren't asking him to make a fucking pizza for us. We were literally asking for 2 bottles of water. This wasn't going to throw the whole line into some sort of disaster where everybody was going to be delayed 30 minutes for their movie. But it really wouldn't have been any different than somebody texting you if you're still sitting in the theater and saying, "Hey, I'm at the line, what do you want?" And so, but when he asked me and I said, "Oh, 2 bottles of water," that's kind of when she went a little bit ballistic.
All right, you know what I should have done is just handed that woman a 20 and just said, "I'm paying for your stuff. If you're this upset, let me just pay for your," or let her go in front of me, like anything. Like, I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover. What can I say? Okay, I want to get back to like talking about like how this fits into the DC universe. Does this make us anticipate Justice League more? It doesn't. The one thing that I liked about this movie, it didn't, other than the photograph, which we all know we saw the photograph in Batman v Superman. What's great is that photograph paid off, right? Like, you saw these characters. There's like an Indian, there's a guy in a kilt, there's another dude in a fez, and Chris Pine and Wonder Woman. And they're all like in this photo. And like, I guess I didn't even realize that all those characters, these side characters, which I like these side characters that were like Steve Trevor's, like they were like his Howling Commandos, except they weren't called that because Howling Commandos, that's a Marvel thing. So, but like,
they're like, it's Latrine, and who are all the other characters from Top Secret? Yeah, it's all those Chocolat Mousse and Latrine. It's all of those French, the Resistance guys.
Yeah. So that actually, but that's the only thing that connects it. I feel like the problem with a lot of these movies, some of these where they're trying to build a superhero connected universe, they put too many Easter eggs so that you can I can't stand that. I feel like Batman v Superman was like this weird bridge movie to Justice League, where from what I know, because some things have leaked on Reddit and other places that I'll read, I don't know why I'm doing a robot voice. I'm doing a robot voice. I do, when I talk about nerd stuff, I feel like I should speak like a nerd robot. But I read a description of a detailed description of the plot of Justice League, and it might make you think Batman v Superman's a better movie because all those like dreams and dreams within dreams kind of pay off, but also who cares? But what I liked about Wonder Woman was it didn't feel the need to be connected to everything else. And just to confirm, yes, there is no post-credit sequence to Wonder Woman.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, by the way, that is one of the gigantic missed opportunities of this movie. You have a movie 6 months out from Justice League. Not only was there no post-credit sequence to sort of ramp up to that, there was no Justice League trailer. So there is nothing. There was nothing. And I would even argue, the movie starts with kind of these current day bookends where she gets the photo, which ultimately are kind of totally unnecessary. And it really does just exist to tie this one thread from Batman v Superman into this movie. Because if you just start when she's a little girl and you tell that story, you don't really need. I mean, I guess you kind of. It's fine to talk about the photo, and the photo is sort of a decent detail, but it's utterly unimportant because. It just felt shoehorned in. I mean, did you feel that the bookends were kind of unnecessary?
I was fine with them, actually. I mean, and I thought it was like nice that it paid off something from Batman v Superman that seemed like superfluous then, but now it actually kind of, at least it connects. It doesn't really pay off much, but it connects. No, I thought it was fine, and it was good to remind audiences that she is in our present day, and that we have to do a bit of a Captain America retro story first. It was very. I mean, this movie was very much like Captain America and Iron Man to me. Like those two films kind of fused together with the Wonder Woman mythos. I thought this is what that was, and it was fine. It's like I think we needed just a kind of a, I don't want to say a standard DC movie, but we just needed like not such a crazy DC movie, because the last 3 were pretty extreme, and that's one thing Marvel I think has gotten right, is like they found the pitch perfect, just like sort of sweet spot for their movies. That like it's a formula. When you go in, you kind of know what you're going to get, but man, it's so well calibrated now. Whereas the DC movies have not been calibrated. They've been like all over the place in terms of like how excited you are from one minute to the next, or what plot points are important, what plot points aren't important, and all this stuff about like building in stuff for future movies, I think is dangerous. If it pays off, great, you're lucky, but I just think they were so desperate to get to Justice League without building the individual characters first that they're kind of suffering along the way. But fortunately, Wonder Woman, I think, was actually really well handled. So it's like, in that regard, they got that right,
Okay, so I do agree that it feels like a Phase 1 Marvel movie. The problem is we're getting to the end of Phase 2 in the Marvel movies. So in terms of the comic book kind of landscape right now, I don't feel, when we're getting films like Civil War and Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy 2, that sort of Phase 1, it is very much like First Avenger. It's got a little bit of a Thor, the original Thor feel to it. And the thing about Phase 1 is you look at some of those movies now, having gone through another Thor, 2 Avengers movies, 3 Captain America movies. So you look at those Phase 1 movies and you kind of go, oh, like Captain America's not quite as good as I remember it being. Thor is not quite as good as because those movies have gotten progressively better. So now when you say this feels very much like a Phase 1 Marvel movie, I'm kind of going, oh yeah, it does remind me of Captain America. I don't dig Captain America that much anymore. There are 2 better Captain America movies that come out now. So now I'm automatically comparing it to a Captain America movie that I really don't think is all that great anymore. It's good, but in terms of the Marvel world, it's not. And I agree, Charlie, that this feels so reverse engineered to get to Justice League as quickly as possible that I don't think they've allowed the breathing room that's necessary to give these characters the movies. Because like Batman v Superman was supposed to be Man of Steel too, and then that got totally shoehorned into this Batman Superman movie, and that's where you have 27 dream sequences and everything's got to fit, and so that's a little problematic. Plus the photo. The callback photo to Batman v Superman doesn't work because I cut that photo out of my edit.
I was just thinking, like, imagine if all the Justice League characters had gotten this type of movie first before Justice League.
Right.
It would have been sublime to see, like, all those characters come together in a Justice League movie if we had gotten a standalone for each one. Because, again, I think Wonder Woman handled it perfectly, and it's strange, like, aside from Man of Steel, like, she's the only one getting her own solo movie before Justice League. And I think they all, with the exception of Cyborg, who I still don't get as a character, maybe it's because I'm an old man, but I kind of feel like the rest really should have had their own standalones first. And seeing Wonder Woman now confirms that. Like, Wonder Woman works so well for that purpose that Justice League will only benefit because of Wonder Woman. And I think, if anything, Wonder Woman is going to help Justice League immeasurably.
Well, we're getting to the end of the show. I know that Anthony Ray Bench is going to dial in with his opinion, but I want to get everyone's final thoughts. Wonder Woman, DC movie universe, final thoughts, starting with Walter.
As a kind of like a casual.
That's great. I really appreciate. No, I'm kidding.
No, as a casual superhero movie goer, I'm not into the comics all that much. Like I said, I enjoyed it for what it was. It was a good superhero flick. It was a great introduction to the Wonder Woman character that, like you said, is going to help the Justice League movie immeasurably after the tonal disaster that was Suicide Squad, the really dark and gritty Batman v Superman. It's a great kind of a jumping off point for that universe, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
In a way, it's the Iron Man of Wonder Woman movies. Does that make any sense whatsoever. I'm not sure. Okay, what would you like to say? Final thoughts, because you looked at me right after the movie, Linda Sue, and you said, we need to talk about this. And it was one of the most nerve-wracking things of like, when someone, it's like a real serious, we need to talk about Wonder Woman. So what do you want to say on final thoughts? And we'll pass it down to Carlee, Charlie, and Cliff, and Justin he'll give us he'll have the last word.
Did you want to go first, Carlee? Well, me? Oh, okay. Well, I like to say my final thought of positivity, that it is about female empowerment. I was actually super turned on the very first part, the female warriors on their horses. Wow. That, to me, was very exciting. I wish.
Could you repeat that, but slower?
Oh, and I love Robin Wright. She had the intensity that I needed, and it wasn't sustained throughout the whole movie.
She was like Brando in the original Superman.
Right. And
I'm sorry, I shouldn't interrupt. Oh my God, I'm being such
but that's your opinion. And I love Gal Gadot. She's just superb, beautiful, gorgeous, sexy, and muscular. Yes. Carlee, what do you think?
How spoilery are we getting with this? Just okay. All right. My final thoughts of this movie were I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to admit right now, and this will come as no surprise to Chris Gore, because this is my only reason for ever being on any of his podcasts or panels or anything. This is my first time watching a Snyderverse DC movie, because somehow I've missed them all. Even though I've had tickets to every single one of them, I'm pretty sure I've somehow just never made it to the theater. And so this was my first foray into...
making a face like Donald Sutherland at the end. Sorry.
So I'm always that guy. I'm always the late to the party kid. But I thought it was really, really fun. I did think that there was a little bit of drag towards the end. I thought it was really fun when I kind of felt like we were still playing in the real world with war and all of that. And then when it got more supernatural with the tower and stuff, that lost me for a while. And then after the epic sacrifice that was the impetus for the final battle, I thought that kind of kicked it back up a notch, and that was cool. But my final thought is, Professor Remus Lupin, how could you do this to us? I do not understand it, and I do not like it, and I refuse to acknowledge it. And so that's my final thought.
Well, I'd like to end on a positive note. I absolutely love the new Twin Peaks. I think it's... I just think it's amazing, and I can't wait for part 5, which is going to be on in a couple days. And
We should do a Twin Peaks episode.
Well, yeah, we should do a Twin Peaks episode.
Yeah, we will.
But no, I'll seriously, I thought it was a good movie. Patty Jenkins did a really great job. Gal Gadot was phenomenal, and great cast, great humor. I love the relationships. Visually, it was solid. So I think it's a very. I mean, it sounds like faint praise. It's a solid movie, but I think we needed a solid movie out of the DC Snyderverse. So we just needed something stable, and we got it.
All right, this is Cliff. I mean, it's very good. It's not great, and I think that it probably will help to temper expectations a little bit. It's not a perfect film, but within this universe, it's damn near perfect. But again, that's it wasn't a high bar to clear, and I think that's its biggest weakness, is that it exists in a universe that is kind of half mediocre to downright awful. So, it's the Marvel movies exist in very strong company, and the DC movies, the current Snyderverse, don't. And that's, I think, probably, I'm going to guess that's a little bit of why this is getting a lot of love, is because people are just like, it's not terrible. It's not awful. But it's very good. It is very good. It's not a waste of time. Definitely see it. Definitely see it in the theater. But, walk in knowing that you're not going to see Civil War. It's not going to be that caliber. But, hopefully in a few years, when they're Justice League 5 or whatever, it will be that caliber by then. But who knows? All right, one more.
Go see Deadpool again.
And with that, I pass the podcast off to Anthony Ray Bench for final thoughts, and let's get out of here.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm joined by my girlfriend, Megan Kathleen. We saw Wonder Woman last night. My initial impression is that I loved the film. I can't wait to see it again. Aside from some bad CG throughout, the film was absolutely gorgeous. I loved the look of Themyscira. I love how they juxtaposed it with London and the battlefields in Germany. I think it was a well-shot film, and the cast was superb. It did a really solid origin story. I loved the references to, how Hippolyta sculpted Diana out of clay, which is the origin story originally given to the character. What did you think, Megan?
Overall, I really enjoyed the film. I'm not much of a DC person, so I don't know much about Wonder Woman's background, but I enjoyed the casting, the writing, the pace of the film. I thought it was really well done. There were some funny scenes. They were enjoyable, some, heartbreaking scenes, and the action was also very well done. So I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely see it again.
I love the fact that it wasn't dark and brooding aesthetically and tonally. It felt bright and vibrant, and it felt like the character was true to the comics. When I watched Batman v Superman, I really had issues with the fact that Batman killed people, or as Zack Snyder put it, let people die. I don't think that fit with Batman at all, and there's a lot of character choices that they made in both Man of Steel and Batman v Superman that just don't feel like Superman would do that. Nothing came off as disingenuous for the Wonder Woman character. I also like how they took more from the comics and less from the TV show. In the TV show, it's set in the 70s. She's a strong woman, but it's very much dated, and I didn't want it to be like you're seeing so many movies like the Baywatch movie that we saw, where
terrible.
Yeah, where they take like these concepts and these feelings that were associated with the era that these shows came out in, and they kind of play it for laughs. And I was really worried that they would do that, make references to the TV show and
her spinning and
yeah, and they didn't, and I'm really happy about that. I love that it's a pro-woman film. I really hope that it's mega successful. That way DC and Marvel both will take more chances with female-led characters. I know DC's developing a Batgirl film with Joss Whedon helming it.
And Miss Marvel coming out in a few years.
Yeah, but it irritates me that Marvel took so long. The first Marvel movie, Iron Man, I believe it came out in 2008. Yeah, it came out in May of 2008. It's 2017 now, like 9 years later, and we still don't have a female-led superhero movie, but we have a movie we have two movies featuring Talking Raccoon that just blows my mind.
Yeah, I do agree. After probably like the success of Phase 1, they should have already had one in production. We should have already had a Captain Marvel or a Black Widow movie by now.
Yeah, I mean, the closest thing Marvel has to a female-led superhero story is Jessica Jones right now. And I loved Jessica Jones. Mm-hmm. I thought it was fantastic. I loved the World War I setting. I love that they went with World War I. It was different because we had Captain America, the first Avenger, taking place in World War II. That scene with the trench where she just walks out with the shield, like that was amazing. Probably one of my favorite action sequences of all time. I guess we can talk about the things that we didn't like about the film. A thing that sticks out to me is they have like a switcheroo with the villain. The true villain should have been revealed a lot early on. That way we could connect with the villain. We can identify what his motives are. We can get to know him and his personality. Like Loki comes to mind in the Thor movie. And I know we're comparing Marvel and DC a lot in this conversation, but Loki is hands down the best villain that the Marvel Universe has because we got to know him.
Yeah, we got to know his backstory. We got to sympathize with him.
Yeah, and when the reveal, they kind of place in your head that this general character is going to be the main villain. He's Ares, and Wonder Woman is after him, and she believes that if she kills him, it's going to stop the war. And then they reveal that he's not the bad guy. It felt like it gave me an Iron Man 3 vibe. Oh, he's not the villain. I'm the villain. Mwahaha. I thought that was truly weak, and I thought that was tacked on. I love the comic book version of Ares, and I love that the New 52 established that Diana is also a child of Zeus, so they're brother and sister. They didn't really touch on that dynamic. There was no, I mean, there's a throwaway line about,
at the end.
Like, this is the end for you, brother, or something.
Oh, she said, goodbye, brother.
Yeah. I thought it was a missed opportunity. Other than that, some of the characters were really underdeveloped. Like Chris said, Wonder Woman kind of had her own Howling Commandos. There was no resolution to their storyline. The movie just kind of ended quickly. And like I said, there was some really bad CG. But was there anything about the movie that you didn't care for?
I can't really think of anything that I didn't like. I can agree with you on the villain aspects being that I don't know what that actor's name is, but every time I saw him, he just reminded me of his Harry Potter character. My one thing that I think about it now, the Dr. Poison, I kind of wish we knew why she was so evil, why she wanted to kill so many people. Like, how did she get that mark on her face? Why is she, wearing porcelain coverings on her face? Like, I think like a little bit more into her, just to see why she's so bent on killing thousands of people and willing to, spoiler, gas up an entire village. For her, just kind of like, oh, she's a villain and she makes gas. And when at the end of the movie, she doesn't get any closure either. You just kind of see her at the end and then that's it. Yeah,
they drop her by the wayside. I disagree. I don't think every villain needs an origin story. I like the concept of just introducing a character and not spending, 20 minutes on why this character is the way that she is.
Well, even like a throwaway line to like the lieutenant that she was working, or the general that she was working with, be like, oh, don't forget what happened, to kind of like talk about her injury. I was more fascinated why she was covered in porcelain, which you don't see until the end of the movie what is actually there, and was really not that bad. That
part didn't bother me. I'm not really bothered. I just took her as someone sadistic working for the bad guys. I figured the accident was something to do with gas, because that's her weapon of choice. I do agree though that they dropped any sense of resolution with the character. We don't see her being carted off. We don't see the classic like, I'll get you next time, Wonder Woman. But that's the same thing with Diana's Howling Commando group. So you enjoyed this movie, obviously, and I did too. Does this movie make you excited for Justice League at all?
No.
No?
I'm still heavily burnt by Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, which when I first saw them in theaters, because me and you saw Batman v Superman at an early screening before it came out, so we really didn't have a lot of word of mouth affecting our viewing.
No, there were reviews and they were all negative.
But I'm saying like fellow moviegoers, though, not from critics.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it the first time, but then when we saw it again in theaters, I was really, really bored. And then when we saw it again, it was not good at all. Same thing with Suicide Squad. I enjoyed it the first time, but when I saw it again and again, it got worse in my opinion. The flaws were more more obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Man of Steel and to a lesser extent Batman v Superman. I think those movies get more flack than they should, really. But I will say this, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman have really boring parts. I was never bored with Suicide Squad. I just thought that it wasn't a very good movie. But Man of Steel and Batman v Superman have some slow parts, some unnecessary, just dragging parts. I was never bored with Wonder Woman at all for a second. Not even for a second. Like I think the pacing of this movie was perfect. Mm-hmm. It was fast. It was quick. It wasn't too existential or deep.
One of my favorite TV shows growing up when I was a child was Xena. So
very heavily influenced by Wonder Woman.
So watching this and growing up with Xena, I mean, Xena even looks like Wonder Woman with her costume, and she's always fighting Ares and all that. I kind of really got into that because it was kind of reliving my childhood in a way. So even though I didn't know a lot about Wonder Woman herself, I grew up watching Xena. And if they're so heavily similar, I enjoyed everything. The Amazons, I really enjoyed that part.
Well, to wrap up, I love the movie. You love the movie. We're definitely going to be seeing it again. I hope that it leads to more female-led comic book movies. I hope Marvel and other studios realize that there is a market for a good female-led superhero movie. I think the Electras and the Catwomans out there have really kind of hurt, I guess, the chances of us seeing these kind of movies because they failed at the box office. Recently, Ghost in the Shell failed, and that had a huge star. But the thing is, those movies weren't good. Wonder Woman is a solid film. I highly recommend it.
She did have a solid Thursday opening. I just saw an article saying that she made $11 million just on Thursday showings alone. So that's a good sign.
Well, yeah, that's decent, but I hope it changes the minds of the studio executives so we get more green lights on projects that involve female superhero movies. Megan, thank you for being on the show.
You're welcome.
And that's that. Let's get out of here.